to you all students. So today we are going to see a new prose lesson, Landscape of the Soul, written by Natalie Troveroy. So this chapter is about how different the Chinese art form is from the European art form. So this is the difference between the Chinese art and the European art form. So here the writer, he uses two stories to make a contrast opinions. And European art is about reproducing an actual view, whereas Chinese art is about not creating a real landscape. So European art is an artist's way to let viewers show exactly what he wants them to see in the landscape. So it is about the artist view. But in the Chinese art, it is the artist's spiritual and inner voice, where you can travel from any point and it lets the viewers create a path for their imagination. So Chinese art, you can travel from any point and you can create a path from your own imagination. And in European art, the artist, you can see only the way exactly the artist shows to you. So this is the outline sketch of this prose, and before going into the lines, we'll see a small introduction about the author. So the prose is The Landscape of the Soul. It was written by Natalie Troveroy. She was the wife of the Belgian ambassador to India, and she is an art historian. Recently, she was a living author, and recently she and her friend Agnes translated William Dalrymple's masterpiece on Delhi City of Jinns in pictures. So she was among the most popular wives of envoys of India, and she has done her master's in the history of art and archaeology with a specialization in Japanese art from the Catholic University of Louvain in Belgium. Spain at the eroding heritage of Delhi. And she has been imbibing the cultures of the various cities she visits. When her husband was posted in China, she learnt calligraphy from Yu Glong, direct descendant of a 17th century royal calligrapher. She is an accomplished translator of the catalogues and art books from the Dutch into different European languages. So this is about the author Natalie Troveroy. So now we'll move on to the lesson. A wonderful old tale is told about the painter Wu Dezhou, who lived in the 8th century. His last painting was a landscape commissioned by the Tang Emperor Xuanzong to decorate a palace wall. The master had hidden his work behind the screen, so only the emperor would see it. For a long while, the emperor admired the wonderful scene, discovering forests, high mountains, waterfalls, clouds floating in an immense sky, men on hilly paths, birds in flight. "Look, sire," said the painter, "in this cave at the foot of the mountain dwells a spirit." The painter clapped his hands, and the entrance to the cave opened. "The inside is splendid, beyond anything words can convey. Please let me show your majesty the way." The painter entered the cave, but the entrance closed behind him, and before the astonished emperor could move or utter a word, the painting had vanished from the wall. Not a trace of Wu Dezhou's brush was left, and the artist was never seen again in this world. So here dwells means stay, and splendid means very impressive, and astonished means greatly surprised or impressed. So here this chapter, it begins with a old beautiful tale, and here a painter named Wu Dezhou, who lived in the 8th century, he was assigned to decorate a palace wall by the Tang Emperor Xuanzong. So it was his last painting, and the painter, he painted some painting and he hid his work behind the screen so that only that emperor would see it. So the emperor, upon looking at the painting, he admired so many things into the painting, like discovering forest, high mountains, waterfalls, floating clouds, men on hilly paths, birds in flight, everything. He was wondering so many things, and the painter, he made him to look at the cave in the painting, which was at the foot of the mountain, which was at the bottom of the mountain, and he compared it with a living spirit. So he was saying that inside the mountain, inside the painting, inside the mountain, there was a living spirit. So as the painter, he clapped his hands, the entrance of the cave opened, and the cave let the painter in. So he let the emperor knew how beautiful the inside of the cave was, and he was saying so many things about the cave, and he asked him to show all this to him. So the painter, he entered the cave and the entrance closed immediately behind him, and the emperor, he couldn't enter the cave. So the emperor, he was very greatly surprised, and the painting, it immediately vanished from the wall, and after that the painter was never seen again. Such stories played an important part in China's classical education. The books of Confucius and Zhuangzi are full of them. They help the master to guide his disciple in the right direction. Beyond the anecdote, they are deeply revealing of the spirit in which art was considered. Contrast the story or another famous one about a painter who wouldn't draw the eye of a dragon he had painted for the fear it would fly out of the painting, with an old story from my native Flanders that I find most representative of Western painting. Here, disciple means a follower, and anecdote means a short, interesting story of a real person, and Flanders means a medieval country in Western Europe. So these kind of stories played an important role in the classical education in China. So similarly, like the books of Confucius and Zhuangzi are full of such stories, as they help the master to help and guide his followers in the right direction. So when they read up the stories, the followers, when the common people, when they read up the stories, they'll be guiding. It is like a kind of help and guide for his followers to find the right path, the right direction. So these kind of stories were considered to be deeply revealing of the spirit, just like the art. So there was another famous story, like the previous story. So it is in contrast to the previous one. So here the painter, he will not paint the eye of a dragon, because he feared that the dragon would fly out from the painting. So he couldn't paint. He drew the entire outline sketch of a dragon, but he just missed out the part of an eye. So he didn't paint the eye of a dragon because he was scared that the dragon would fly up from the painting. And it was also one of the stories from many others which came from the medieval country in Western Europe. In 15th century, Antwerp, a master blacksmith called Quinton Menzies fell in love with the painter's daughter. The father would not accept a son-in-law in such a profession. So Quinton sneaked into the painter's studio and painted a fly on its latest panel, with such delicate realism that the master tried to swat it away before he realized what had happened. Quinton was immediately admitted as an apprentice into his studio. He married his beloved and went on to become one of the most famous painters of his age. These two stories illustrate what each form of art is trying to achieve: a perfect illusionist likeness in Europe, the essence of inner life and spirit in Asia. So here Antwerp is a city of northern Belgium, and delicate realism means the quality of art that make it real seen. And illusionist likeness means illusion created which resembles something. So here during 15th century in Antwerp, a place named Antwerp, a city of northern Belgium, a blacksmith, there was a master blacksmith named Quinton Menzies. So he fell in love with the painter's daughter, and the father of his beloved, he was not accepting their relationship because of his profession, because he was a blacksmith and he was a painter. So this blacksmith, he sneaked into the painter's studio and he painted a fly on his latest panel, his painting panel. So the painting, it was so real, and the master, he tried to hit the fly away. It was a painting actually, it was not a real fly. But since the painting was so real, the master, he tried to hit the fly away before he realized that it was just a painting. So now the blacksmith, he was accepted into the studio as a trainee, and he married the painter's daughter, and later he became one of the most famous painters of his age. So the above two stories are trying to illustrate the form of art in two different regions. So in Europe, the art is perfect and like an illusion which resembles something. But in Asia, the art, it gives an essence of inner life and spirit. So this was a difference of two different regions. In Europe, the art is perfect like an illusion which resembles something. And in Asia, the art, it gives an essence of inner life and spirit. In this Chinese story, the emperor commissions a painting and appreciates its outer appearance. But the artist reveals to him the true meaning of his work. The emperor may rule over the territory he has conquered, but only the artist knows the way within. Let me show the way, the Dao, a word that means both the path or the method and the mysterious work of the universe. The painting is gone, but the artist has reached his goal beyond any material appearances. So here in this Chinese story, the story which I mentioned you in the first slide, here the artist, he reveals the true meaning of his work to the emperor who rules over his territory but didn't know the way how to rule it. So the emperor, he saw only the outer appearances of the wall painting, and the work was mysterious, and the name Dio, which means something which has both parts, and the artist, that was the artist meant also. So the painting was gone after the artist reached the caves, and the motive was fulfilled that some work is beyond material appearances. So in this Chinese story, so we can understand that the painting is something beyond any material appearances. So it's something beyond the illusion, something beyond illusion. It has some kind of spiritual, something supernatural thing was there in that painting. A classical Chinese landscape is not meant to reproduce an actual view as would a Western figurative painting, whereas the European painter wants you to borrow his eyes and look at a particular landscape exactly as he saw it. From a specific angle, the Chinese painter does not choose a single viewpoint. His landscape is not a real one, and you can enter it from any point, then travel in it. The artist creates a path for your eyes to travel up and down, then back again in leisurely movement. This is even more true in the case of the horizontal scroll, in which the action of slowly opening one section of the painting, then rolling it up to the move on to the other, adds a dimension of time which is unknown to any other form of the painting. It also requires the active participation of the viewer, who decides at what pace he will travel through the painting, a participation which is physical as well as mental. The Chinese painter does not want you to borrow his eyes, he wants you to enter his mind. The landscape is an inner one, a spiritual and a conceptual space. So here figurative painting means a metaphoric representation of an art, and conceptual space means a relation with an abstract representation. So here the Chinese landscape painting is not made with a real viewpoint, but it is a representation of the artist's own thoughts. So the Western painting in Europe is a figurative art form, and the European painter, he paints a landscape to show you a specific scene of the landscape, whereas the Chinese painter doesn't choose a real viewpoint. So you can enter the painting from any point and can travel anywhere where your thoughts and imagination take you. So it's up to you to choose a real viewpoint. So the Chinese artist, he wants you to travel by creating your own path and then come out in a relaxed movement. In China, this mode of seeing a painting is more enjoyable. So when you see a painting, you can imagine yourself in it, or you can imagine anything else, and you can imagine any of your thought, and you can have a relaxed moment on seeing a painting. So a horizontal scroll is a form where one section of a painting is opened one by one, rolling it up to move on the other side. So it creates a dimension which is not practiced in any other form of artwork, and it requires both mental and physical participation of the viewer. So the Chinese painter, he wants everyone to enter. He wants you to enter his or her mind and see the painting from his own thoughts, from his or her own imaginations. So the landscape, it was created by the Chinese artist, is spiritual. It's mostly everything was spiritual, inner and conceptual or abstract space. This concept is expressed as sanshui, literally mountain water, which used together represent the word landscape. More than two elements of an image, these represent two complementary poles, reflecting the diost view of the universe. The mountain is young, reaching vertically towards heaven, stable, warm, and dry in the sun, while the water is yin, horizontal, and resting on the earth, fluid, moist, and cool. The interaction of yin, the respective feminine aspect of universal energy, and its counterpart yang, active and masculine, is of course the fundamental notion of daoism. What is often overlooked is an essential third element, the middle void, where their interaction takes place. This can be compared with the yogic practice of pranayama. Breathe in, retain, breathe out. The suspension of breath is the void where meditation occurs. The middle void is essential. Nothing can happen without it. Hence the importance of the white unpainted space in Chinese landscape. Daoism means a Chinese philosophy based on the writings of Lao Tzu, and void means empty. So here in this paragraph, the Chinese concept of art is also expressed as Sanshi, which also means the mountain water. So it is used together to represent the word landscape, and the two complementary poles of an image, it reflects the diaistic view. So the mountain in the landscape in Yang, which means to reach vertically towards the heaven, stable, warm and dry in the sun, and whereas the water is the Yin, which is a receptive and feminine aspect of universal energy, and Yang is active and it is masculine and opposite of Yin. So Yin is water, it has a feminine aspect, and Yang is active masculine and it is opposite to Yin. And there is a third essential element which is a middle void, which is a place where they interact, both the Yin and Yang interact. And the middle void can be compared to pranayama, which means to breathe in, retain and breathe out, like yoga, a breathing exercise. So here the suspension of the breath is the void in this meditation process, and it is an essential part as nothing can happen without it. Hence the white unpainted space in Chinese landscape is equally important. This is also where the man finds a fundamental role in that space between heaven and earth. He becomes the conduit of communication between both poles of the universe. His presence is essential, even it is only suggested, far from being lost or oppressed by the lofty peaks. He is, in Francois Cheng's wonderful expression, the eye of the landscape. Conduit means a channel or a tube, and oppressed means a burden, and lofty means tall or high. So the middle void is where a man, he finds the important role. So man is the channel of communication in the space between heaven and the earth, which are the two poles of the universe. So man's presence is essential, it is very much important, and it is not being lost or suppressed due to the high peaks, but he is the eye of the landscape. So as a man in the Chinese landscape, he'll be able to, he should be able to imagine and put down his thoughts to the painting, and he should relax himself putting up his own thoughts. So man's presence is essential, and it is not being lost or suppressed due to the high peaks, but he is the eye of the landscape. So this lesson, it speaks about the difference between the European and Asian painting, and there are some fable kind of stories are also included in this lesson. So please read out the lines again and again for better understanding. Thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day.